Hello everyone, this is Katie with KindredSoulArt, and I'm excited to be here with you today, and we're going to do a tutorial on how to use the Brusho crystal colors, which is a powdered pigment that you can use to paint. And I'm going to show you the technique I use to create this fun layered cacao pod painting, except today I'm going to switch it out to do feathers. This technique works with pretty much any outline you want to do. The simpler the outline, the easier it is. But a lot of people find this technique really relaxing, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So let's get started. So what you're going to need today is watercolor paper. I'm using Arch's cold press paper today, and you'll also need something to make mini outlines, mini stencil with, and I just use a 3x5 card, so it's pretty easy, but you can use a regular piece of paper or whatever you have laying around, some tape to tape your painting down, and of course the Brusho colors. The colors I'm going to use today are, so I was playing around with the different colors, and I'm gonna probably stick to these 4 colors today for my layers. I think brown I'll use on another project. I just keep it in that blue turquoise range. And let's see, what else? For the very last layer, to get that really rich, deep black, I like to use a straight black. This is Gram watercolor paint. That is lamp black, is the flavor of that one. And then for the brushes today, I might switch between a couple sizes, but I really like using these black velvet brushes. They're really good quality, and when they're wet, they come to a nice point. So I'm going to be using these ones today, probably mostly this one. This is a size 10. And of course, some water. I got my little water thing here. And then one last thing about the Brusho colors, they are so messy. You can see when I was picking out my colors earlier, I got my fingers all stained, and it's just part of the process. It's kind of messy, which is kind of fun at certain points, but you'll want to be really careful with your space. These powders, let me show you very carefully. They have very, very tiny specks of paint, of pigment that can get everywhere and into your supplies. And I've found some little specks of paint while I've been painting other stuff. So be really careful when you open the Brusho colors. They are very messy. And then connected with that, also you'll want like a rag to wipe your hands on, and to also help with water control in your brush. I think that's it. So let's go ahead and start with taping down our paper. That's how you get this nice edge along your paper. So I'm going to use, this is just regular masking tape, but a lot of people like using painter's tape, and you can also use washi tape. This sometimes doesn't work completely perfectly, especially if you're doing a layered project like this, where it's going to be a lot of water and a lot of buckling for the tape to handle. So I wouldn't recommend washi tape on this one, though you can use it for other kinds of projects where you want an edge, but it doesn't have to be super sealed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and tape this down. And I just kind of eyeball it. I'm sure there's people who are more picky about that than I am, but I just do my best, try and get it close. I think if there's anything that watercolor has taught me, it's to let go of perfectionism. So one trick that you can do in lining these up is to try and make the corners look like a square, and that can help with eyeballing it. Oh, and then for the size of this is a 5x7 piece of paper that I'm using today. And try and line it up like a square. Put some lotion on before this. That may have been a mistake because now my hands are really slippery. Okay. There we go. Try and get this down nice and flat. I've also found that you can take your fingernail and not too hard, but with a little bit of pressure, try and close down those edges where the tape might stick up, because I've painted where sometimes water will escape in those corners, so use your fingernail to get a tighter seal on those. Okay, first layer is so fun because it's the most paint that you get to see, and you're just gonna start with clean water. And we're gonna start with this first layer and then go to the stencil, so it has a little bit of time to dry. So don't worry, we're gonna get to your stencil in a second, but let's do the first layer. Oh, one other thing that will be really handy during this video is a hair dryer. It can take quite a while for the layers to dry, and so it'll be to your advantage to have a hair dryer handy. If you want to save time. If you just want to take that time to relax, get a drink, do whatever, feel free. Okay, so I'm going to cover this all with water. You can see some of that red pigment from before. Like I said, pigment gets everywhere. Gotta be so careful with it. Okay, so I've got this nice and wet. Then for my first layer, I am going to use this emerald green, which is super fun. I'm just gonna use my fingers. Some people will poke a hole in the lid and then shake it out, which is a nice method. Other people will get a dry brush and pull it out. I kind of like the control of using my fingers. So even though it's messy, I'm just gonna go for it. Okay, I think that'll be sufficient. Okay, I'm gonna wipe my fingers off. And you'll hear me spray something. I'm just using a little spray bottle to get my fingers wet to then get the pigment off. I'm gonna clean up the edge a little bit. It's so fun. I love seeing all these colors just expand and move. Okay, so while that is drying a little bit, let's go to making our stencil. So the simpler the shape, the easier it's gonna be when you actually go to paint and put water down. So the shape that I'm doing today can be either a leaf or a feather, depending on how you want to do the details on afterwards. To make it a leaf, you just have the lines come from the inside, And then to make it a feather, you just have lines come from the outside. That's one way to modify this stencil. Okay, so all I did for this shape was to almost like you're drawing an eye. Try this in frame. Okay. So come out and then in again. Start skinny, go out, in again, and have just a little stem at the bottom. And then you'll have your ridge in the middle. So I just use a regular pair of scissors and cut that out. Of course, you can do any shape that you want for your feathers or your leaves. You can do multiple different ones as well. So you might have feather that's this shape. You might have one that's a little bit more square or rounded. Do whatever is going to work best for you. Just to keep it simple for this video and for myself, I'm just going to stick with this one leaf shape. And this isn't dry yet, so I'm going to go ahead and mute myself so you're not blown out of the water with my hair dryer. And back in a minute. Okay, I think that is dry enough for our purposes. So now I'm going to trace some leaf shapes. If you want to, you can just go straight to painting the next layer, but I kind of like having some shapes drawn in for myself. So when I look at this canvas, I like to look for places where the patterns are really unique, because that is what's going to stick. All the other stuff is going to get covered up. So because this ended up a little bit darker than maybe I want for that first layer, you can see how if the first layer is too dark, then the other layers won't show up. So because I want the first layer a little bit lighter, I'm going to try and target some of the lighter areas with my stencil. Maybe one more here. When you're putting your stencils down, especially for the first layer, you don't want to overlap where the stencils are, because then you wouldn't be able to differentiate the shapes from each other. So you want to have the shapes a little bit separated, at least when you're working on the same layer. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my brush, and I'm just grabbing some regular water here with my brush. And I'm going to start painting everywhere around the shapes that I've left. So I'm not painting inside of where my feather shape is, I'm painting around it. That's called negative painting. And that technique is going to help us create those layers. In this part, you want to work fast enough that when you get to putting your Brusho down, the pigment paint, that it's still wet, because the paint spreads through the water when it's activated by it. So if your paper is too dry, then it won't activate it. Okay, now I'm gonna go to turquoise here for my next color, and go ahead and drop it in. Wipe my fingers off. It's so messy. It looks like I missed a spot with water where it wasn't wet enough, so I'm just gonna come in with water through here just to help it along. I think that'll be good enough for this layer. So this one's pretty wet, so it might take a minute to dry, but if yours dries faster, go ahead and skip ahead in this video to the next layer. Each layer after this is going to be more of the same, so you're going to lay the water down, lay the Brusho down, then let it dry, trace your next layer, then water, Brusho, wait for it to dry, then you do your next layer. So you can do as many layers as you want. We're doing 5 total ones for this paper. I'm gonna mute myself again and see you at the next one. Okay, back for another round. So when you're doing your different layers, it's really nice to overlap. So for example, I wouldn't want to try and miss all the leaves that I've already done for this next layer. Being able to overlap some of them at least is going to help with the contrasting layers. So let's see, I think I'll do one across here. through here. So one of the reasons why I'm checking is so I like to make it a little bit easier on myself when I'm doing the designs. So for example, if this were a little bit further away here, then I would have another tiny spot to paint. So I'm kind of a cheater in that I also like to make it easy for myself. And I'm just gonna do probably one more. Almost done with my water on this layer. If you're having a hard time seeing where you lay down the water, if you look to the side a little bit, so if you have a lamp or your light source, if you move your head to the side, you can kind of see the sheen of it. Can help. Okay, this next one I'm using is ultramarine. Notice that the more layers you do, the less easy the paint spreads through the different through the layers, so you might have to help it along a little bit more as you go, but I kind of like how it creates the different textures. So even if it stays put, that's okay, you still get the textures out of it, which is fun. So again, I'm just spraying my fingers to rinse them off a little bit, and gonna help this Brusho along. And these colors are turning out really cool. Looks like I might need a little bit more of the paint in this corner. Smoothing this edge out. Okay, time to dry again. And I'm gonna go on mute. If you want, you can pause or fast forward, whatever you need to do to, if you're following along live with me. Okay, this is the last, I think last layer, almost last layer, where we're going to draw in. So I'm going to take my handy stencil. think that will be good for maybe one more. Okay, I'm gonna call that one good. Now again, same process. Going to put down my water. You'll notice that when you're putting down water, it'll pull up some of the pigment underneath. That's okay, that's part of Brusho, because it leaves the crystals on top. So this is actually going to work to your advantage later when we're going to pull some of those crystals up for details. I think my colors are ending up a little bit dark, so if I were to do this again, I would probably choose a lighter first base to start with. So this first green one did end up kind of dark, so I'd probably choose like a yellow, or maybe not use as much Brusho. Since these areas are smaller, sometimes your other ones will start to dry, so try and supply them with some extra water while you're painting. And of course, if they do dry, that's totally fine. Just add some extra water, help it along. Last little square, triangle. Last little spot. Okay, this one I'm using purple for my last color layer. By the time you get to this layer, the paint is so thick that this one you do have to help along quite a bit. Re-wet this. Okay, so we're gonna dry one more time, and then this very last one that we'll do, we'll use the lamp black. So I'm gonna mute myself again. Okay, this is, like I said, the layer where we are going to use our black. So I'm going to do a couple more shapes. Trying to make it easy for myself. Let's do 1 through... here. And I think maybe the last one I'll make there. I know that overlaps a little bit, but I'm okay with it for this last layer. Maybe a little more. Okay. Sorry. Sometimes I get wrapped up in those details. Okay, so I'm gonna pull out my palette, and I've already got quite a bit of black on this side, so if you don't have any black out, go ahead and bring it out. You can use tube paints, pan paints, whatever. The tube paints will get you a little bit more saturated, I think. With how saturated the colors ended up being for the 4 that I chose, you can't see the distinction between the levels as well. So if I were to do this again, like I said earlier, I think I would choose colors that maybe had a little bit more difference between them. I think the ones that I chose have crystals from the others in them, so it makes it hard to differentiate the layers. That's okay. I think this will still end up really cool. This last layer is really nice in that you're putting paint straight down on the paper instead of putting water down and then the Brusho, and so you have a lot more control over where the paint is going, and you don't have to there's not the same rush to get the paint down or get the water down. You don't have to wait for it to, or you don't have to try and keep it wet before you put your paint down. This layer is also easy to get lost in. So I'm trying to see where this goes. If it's not perfect, that's fine too. Nobody's gonna be looking at your last layer, judging you. Alright, let me take a look at that. Try and get a little bit more black in this little square. Also, sorry about my squeaky chair. This chair came with the desk, and it has gotten progressively squeakier over the last few months. And I've tried like tightening the bolts and stuff on it, and I might just have to bite the bullet and get a different chair. It drives me bonkers. But that's the squeaking in the background. I don't know. Okay. So you are done with all of your layers now. And so at this stage, what we're going to do is we're going to add some details. And the details will make some of this pop a little bit. And I actually might use some white because, like I said, the layers kind of got lost with the colors that I used. So don't panic if that's the case for you. Art is about adjusting and figuring out your process. So I'm going to use Jelly Roll, see if that'll work. And if that doesn't work, then I also have some bleed proof white. Actually, I might use that anyway. You know what? I'm going to go with that. So I'm switching to bleed proof white for some of the designs that we'll do here at the end. So some details on your feathers or leaves or whatever you want to do before we get to the bleed proof white. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to some of the lower layers, and just move my brush along to pull up some of that color, because Brusho, like I said, stays on the surface a little bit, and so you can pull up that paint. And when you're pulling up that paint, make sure that you're pulling up in that same design. So I'm still making a feather pattern here on this lower leaf as I pull it up to use in this upper one, so that it's not like you don't have weird lines all in your lower ones while trying to get these upper ones. And I'm just going to feather in the edges a little bit. think I'm ready to go to my white. Let me fix this one last leaf top. So if you haven't used bleed proof white before, it's kind of like opaque paint. If you don't have bleed proof white, you can use a jelly roll. A jelly roll will probably pull up more of the pigment from the Brusho than bleed proof white. If so, that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly stark white. You can also use gouache if you want. If you have acrylic, you can use that. It's not going to be as nice to use, especially with watercolor, but that's your art, and if that's what you got, that's what you got. So use what you have. And then at this point, even if you don't have a leaf on your black part, you can still add some details with your white. If you're like me and had layers that don't show a lot of details. Also, this is really cool. I just wanted to show you this in my water. Look how dark it is. That's so neat. I think that's sort of my favorite side pieces of painting is just how fun the water is when you get to see pigment and everything move in it. So cool. Let's see. We have one across here. Actually, I think this turned out pretty fun. Okay, I'm gonna use my jelly roll and add just a few dots to mix things up. Like I said, I'm not sure that the jelly roll is going to pull up keep as much white, but we'll see. And you can see this jelly roll isn't making as much paint as I would like, so I'm gonna switch back to the bleed proof white. Dots are just easier to make with with jelly rolls, but we'll make it work. I know some people sometimes ask how I know where to put the dots. And for me, when I'm getting close to the end of a painting, usually what I'll do is I'll kind of sit back a little bit and look for where my eye is drawn and add some interest or add a little bit to that spot. So where you put your dots is going to be a little bit different than where I put mine. If you're adding dots, that is. If yours, if you ended up getting more clear layers, like on this one you see I didn't add any dots, but I do have some of the details, then you are pretty much done. And then if you're doing dots with me, I would love to see all the work that you're doing and your paintings. So you can find me on social media, tag me, let's be friends, have a nice painting party together. Okay, I'm almost done with these. I'm gonna call that done. Now we're gonna do the tape reveal. I love this stage because it's so fun to see the edges come out from the paint. There we go. Okay, so when you pull your tape, you're gonna wanna pull towards the outside in case it rips your paper, and then at about a 45-degree angle. Looks like that corner got a little soaked. Oh, it's okay. That's probably from where I had my lotion in it. Made the tape not as sticky. There we go. Oh, it's so fun. Okay, so this is your project, and hopefully you had fun with this. And if you end up doing this project in the future, or if you've done it with me today, I would love to see, like I said, your work. Tag me on social media, KindredSoulArt, and hopefully we'll see you back here next month. If there's anything you want me to paint, let me know, and I'll see you later. Bye.